The day my son called me worthless, I made one phone call. Not to my lawyer, not yet, but to reserve the planetarium dome where his mother and I used to bring them when stars still mattered more than status symbols. My name is Daniel Harris. I live in a small townhouse in Rochester, New York, the kind my children now consider beneath them. Friday afternoon, they stormed through my front door like creditors collecting a debt. "Dad, we need $110,000, Nathan announced, not asked. My oldest, 32, wearing a suit that cost more than my monthly mortgage. Lily nodded beside him, arms crossed. Private school deposit for Emma. Yacht club membership. And we need to fix our image after that charity gala disaster. Image expenses? I repeated. You wouldn't understand, Nathan said, his voice sharp. You've never cared about building something real. I poured myself coffee. Didn't offer them any. What exactly do you think I've been doing all these years? Living like this. He gestured around my modest living room. While we're out there actually making something of ourselves. Mom would be ashamed. That word. Ashamed. You're worthless to us, he added. Just sign the check. I set down my mug carefully. Very carefully. No. Excuse me? We'll finish this conversation Sunday. I'm hosting a family dinner. Old City Planetarium, 7 p.m. Bring everyone. They exchanged glances, confused, annoyed, but agreed. They thought I'd cave by then, write the check in front of witnesses to avoid embarrassment. They had no idea what was coming. Sunday evening arrived cold and clear. I stood outside the planetarium at 6:30, watching the parking lot fill with cars that had seen better days. Trucks with toolboxes in the beds. Sedans with community college parking stickers. A minivan held together with duct tape and hope. Nathan's BMW pulled up at 6:55, Lily's Mercedes right behind. They stepped out looking irritated, scanning the crowd gathering near the entrance. Dad, who are all these people? Lily asked, her heels clicking on the pavement. Guests, I said simply. Come inside. The planetarium dome still held that particular smell, old carpet, metal railings, the faint ozone scent from the projection equipment. But tonight, someone had set up folding chairs in concentric circles, maybe 200 seats. Nearly all of them filled. My kids recognized no one. This is ridiculous, Nathan muttered. We came for a family dinner, not some. Sit, I said, pointing to 3 empty chairs in the front row. They sat. Barely. I walked to the center of the dome, microphone in hand. The murmur of conversation died. 16 years ago, I began, my wife Sarah died. Pancreatic cancer. 6 months from diagnosis to grave. She was 41. Lily shifted uncomfortably. They hated when I talked about their mother. Before she passed, she made me promise something. Not about raising you 3, she knew I'd do that anyway. She made me promise that the insurance money, the house sale, everything we'd saved, wouldn't just sit in a bank growing interest for kids who already had enough. I looked at Nathan. She made me promise to build something that circulates. A woman in the third row raised her hand. I nodded. My name is Carmen Rodriguez, she said, standing. She wore scrubs, a hospital ID badge clipped to her pocket. 12 years ago, I was cleaning offices at night, raising 2 kids alone. No English. No papers. No hope of anything better. She turned to face my children directly. Your father found me through a community center. He paid for ESL classes. Not just me, a whole cohort of 10 women. Monday and Wednesday nights, 8 to 10 p.m. We learned English. We learned computer basics. We learned how to pass the citizenship test. Carmen's voice grew stronger. I'm a registered nurse now. Pediatric ICU. I make $68,000 a year. And you know what I did last month? Silence. I paid for ESL classes for 6 new women. Because that's what your mother's fund taught me, not handouts, but hand-ups that you pass forward. She sat down. Another hand went up. Martin Webb, said a man with carpenter's hands and sawdust still on his jeans. 8 years back, I had a felony record from when I was 19. Stupid kid stuff. Couldn't get hired anywhere that mattered. Your dad gave me a bridge loan, $3,000, to buy tools and rent workshop space for 6 months. He pulled out his phone, showed my kids' photos. That's my shop now. Webb Custom Furniture. I employ 4 people, 3 of them former inmates. Last year I grossed $220,000. And I paid back that $3,000 plus another $10,000 into the fund because I wanted someone else to get their shot. One by one they stood. A teacher who'd gotten emergency funds when her mother's medical bills threatened foreclosure, she now tutored refugee kids for free every Saturday. A mechanic who'd received legal help fighting wrongful termination, he now ran a sliding scale repair shop where payment was whatever you can afford. A young man who'd gone through a workforce training program in welding, now an instructor at the same community college where he'd once struggled. 30 voices. 40. 50. Each one a thread in a web my kids never knew existed. You called these people freeloaders, I said quietly, looking at Nathan. Last Thanksgiving. You said people like this were bleeding the system dry. His face went red. I didn't. You did. I was standing right there. I gestured to the crowd. These are the people you said weren't worth helping. That they should figure it out themselves like you did. Lily found her voice. Dad, we didn't come here to be ambushed. No, you came here to demand $110,000 for yacht clubs and image consulting. My voice echoed in the dome. You came here to tell me I was worthless because I don't live in the right neighborhood or drive the right car. I pressed a button. The lights dimmed. The dome above us blazed to life, not with stars, but with numbers. Projected across the synthetic sky in glowing letters. Sarah Harris Memorial Fund. 2009 to 2025. Column after column of data rotated slowly overhead. 412 workforce training program graduates. 129 mentor pairs established. 73 emergency family crisis interventions. $847,000 total disbursed over 16 years. $206,000 replenished by alumni contributions. 24% payback rate, no obligation required. This is what your mother built, I said. What I've managed in her name. 412 people who can now support their families with dignity. 129 pairs of mentors and ments who meet monthly. 73 families who didn't lose their homes or go hungry during their darkest hour. The numbers continued scrolling. 87 new small businesses launched. 34 college degrees completed. 156 children whose parents now have stable income. 2 medical degrees. 6 teaching certificates. 19 trade certifications. And that 24% payback? I let that hang. Your mother predicted 15%. These people are exceeding expectations because this was never charity. It was investment. Investment in human potential. Nathan stared up at the dome, his mouth slightly open. Every person in this room tonight, I continued, either received help from the Sarah Fund or gave help back into it. Some both. This is what community looks like. This is what circulation means. A woman I didn't immediately recognize stood up in the back. Short gray hair, glasses, professional blazer. I'm Dr. Patricia Chen, she said. I don't know if you remember me, Mr. Harris. I squinted. Something familiar about her face. 19 years ago, I was a visiting professor at University of Rochester. Your wife Sarah was in my evening sociology seminar. Non-traditional student, juggling 3 kids and classes. Lily's head snapped up. Mom took classes? She never finished her degree, Dr. Chen said gently. The cancer came too fast. But in that one semester, she wrote a paper that changed how I thought about wealth distribution. She argued that money sitting still is money dying. That true wealth is measured not by accumulation but by velocity, how fast it moves through a community, touching lives, creating opportunity. Dr. Chen walked down the aisle toward us. She cited research showing that every dollar given to working-class families generates approximately $3 in economic activity, while every dollar hoarded by the wealthy generates maybe 30 cents. She called it the circulation theory of dignity. She stopped in front of my children. Your father has been proving your mother's thesis for 16 years. This isn't charity. It's the most sophisticated economic engine this city has. And you 3 just called him worthless. The silence in that dome was absolute. Nathan's hands were shaking. Lily had tears on her cheeks. I took a breath. There's more you need to hear. But first, I want you to understand what you walked into tonight. These aren't strangers. This is family. The family your mother built. The family I've honored. I pressed the button again. The numbers faded. Real stars appeared, the same projection Sarah and I had brought them to see when they were small. Now, I said, we get to the hard part. A man emerged from the shadows near the projection booth. Mid-50s, gray suit, briefcase in hand. Evan Clark, my attorney for the past 20 years, the only lawyer Sarah ever trusted. Good evening, Evan said, his voice measured and professional. He walked to the center of the dome, opened his briefcase, and pulled out a thick document bound in blue covers. Nathan leaned forward. What is this? This, Evan said, is the Sarah Harris Memorial Trust. The full legal instrument. 47 pages detailing distribution guidelines, recipient qualifications, oversight mechanisms, and, most relevant to tonight, conditional clauses regarding beneficiary conduct. He adjusted his glasses and turned to a page marked with a yellow tab. Your father established this trust in 2009 with 3 primary beneficiaries, Nathan Harris, Lily Harris, and May Harris. The trust was designed to provide each of you with structured disbursements at ages 25, 30, and 35, substantial sums to help with home purchases, business investments, or education. Lily's eyes widened. Wait, there's money for us? There was, Evan said carefully. The trust originally allocated approximately $430,000 per child, indexed for inflation. By now, each of your shares would be worth roughly $600,000. Nathan did the math instantly. That's $1.8 million total. Correct. Evan flipped another page. However, the trust includes a provision your mother insisted upon. She called it the Dignity Clause. I'm going to read it exactly as written. He cleared his throat. Should any direct heir engage in public humiliation of the trustee or benefactor, including but not limited to, verbal abuse regarding the benefactor's worth, character, or contribution to family welfare, demands made with entitled disrespect, or statements denigrating the benefactor's life choices, then said heir's unrestricted disbursements shall immediately convert to restricted grants administered through the fund's community board, with the heir forfeiting direct access to their share. The words hung in the air like smoke. Nathan stood up slowly. You're saying? I'm saying your father recorded Friday's conversation. Evan pulled out a small digital recorder. With your permission, Daniel? I nodded. Evan pressed play. Nathan's voice, sharp and cruel, filled the dome. You're worthless to us. Just sign the check. He clicked it off. That statement, Evan continued, triggers the Dignity Clause. As of Friday at 3:47 p.m., Nathan Harris forfeited unrestricted access to his trust share. The funds, currently valued at $643,000, convert to targeted city grants co-funded by program alumni. Nathan's face went pale. "That's my money." "No," I said quietly. "It was never your money. It was your mother's legacy, held in trust, contingent on honoring what she built." Lily gripped the armrests of her chair. Did I trigger it too?" Evan consulted his notes. "You didn't use the specific language that triggers the clause. However, you were present, you supported the demand, and you've made similar statements in the past according to your father's documentation. The board will review your case." "The board?" she whispered. 7 members, Evan explained. 3 fund alumni, 2 community representatives, 1 financial advisor, and your father. They vote on all major distribution decisions. They'll hear your case within 30 days. May, my youngest, 26, who'd been silent this whole time, raised her hand like she was back in school. "I wasn't there Friday. Am I okay?" "Your share remains intact," Evan confirmed. $214,000 at age 25, already disbursed for your graduate school. The remainder is still scheduled. She exhaled in relief, then looked guilty for feeling it. Evan wasn't finished. He pulled out another document, this one stapled. "There's something else you need to know. The Sarah Fund doesn't just give money out. It also tracks economic outcomes. We monitor recipient success rates, employment status, repayment activities. And sometimes we discover interesting patterns." He held up a spreadsheet. "Nathan, in April of last year, your business, Harris Consulting LLC, faced a cash flow crisis. You were 60 days from bankruptcy. You couldn't make payroll. Your business partner was threatening to dissolve the company." Nathan's jaw tightened. "How do you know that?" "Because you received a bridge loan. $35,000 at 0% interest, 18-month repayment term, from something called the Anti-Crisis Business Fund. Do you remember that?" "Of course I remember. I applied through some city entrepreneurship program. They vetted my business plan and," his voice trailed off. "The Anti-Crisis Business Fund," Evan said, "is a subsidiary initiative of the Sarah Harris Memorial Fund. It was created in 2019 specifically to help small business owners survive temporary cash shortfalls. You were recipient number 47. The color drained from Nathan's face. "Your self-made business," I said, "was saved by the fund you just called worthless. By the safety net you said was for freeloaders." Evan turned to Lily. "And you, Lily. Your daughter Emma attends Brookside Academy, correct? $38,000 per year tuition?" "Yes, but I have a merit scholarship that covers half." "You have a scholarship that covers 30%, Evan corrected. The remaining 20%, approximately $7,600 per year for the past 3 years, was covered by an anonymous educational supplement. Do you know where that supplement came from?" Her hands were shaking now. "The Sarah Fund's Educational Emergency Program. You applied 3 years ago when you had unexpected medical bills after your surgery. You were going to pull Emma out of Brookside. The fund topped up your scholarship anonymously so you wouldn't have to." Lily covered her mouth. "Oh my God. $23,000 over 3 years, Evan continued. "You've been benefiting from the exact program you helped your brother mock on Friday." Dr. Chen stood up again from her seat. "This is what Sarah understood. What she tried to teach in that paper. Safety nets are invisible until you need them. And everyone needs them eventually." A man in the audience called out, "I run a small accounting firm now. I review applications for the Anti-Crisis Fund. I remember Nathan Harris's case. Good business model, bad timing, honest numbers. Exactly what the fund was designed for." We approved his loan in 48 hours. A woman added, I'm on the Educational Emergency Committee. I remember Emma's case too. Single mother, medical hardship, strong student. Unanimous approval. Nathan sat down heavily. I didn't know. I swear, I didn't know it was. That's the point, I said. You weren't supposed to know. The fund operates with dignity. No public declarations. No gratitude required. Just help when it's needed, and trust that it'll be paid forward eventually. Evan closed his briefcase. The trust board will meet October 15th to determine final distributions. Nathan's share will almost certainly convert to community grants. Lily's case will be heard. May's remains intact. He paused. But there's one more thing you should know. The person who donated the seed money for the Anti-Crisis Business Fund wasn't your father. It was Martin Webb, the carpenter who received a $3,000 bridge loan 8 years ago. He contributed $50,000 in 2019 because he'd succeeded and wanted others to have their chance. Martin stood up in the audience, gave a little wave. The Educational Emergency Program? Evan continued. Seated by Carmen Rodriguez, the nurse. $25,000 she didn't have to give, but chose to anyway. Carmen nodded from her seat. This is circulation, I said. This is what your mother envisioned. Money that moves. Money that works. Money that builds instead of just sits. The stars rotated slowly overhead, real constellations now, the ones Sarah used to point out when our kids still held our hands. Nathan's voice was barely audible. What do we do now? That, I said, depends on what you choose next. Evan gathered his documents, but he didn't leave the center of the dome. Instead, he pulled out one more sheet of paper, single page, crisp and white. Before anyone makes decisions, he said, there's a final disclosure required by the trust. A mechanism your mother built in for exactly this kind of situation. He looked at me. I nodded. Sarah Harris believed in second chances. She also believed in accountability. So she created what she called the restoration pathway, a way for beneficiaries who trigger the dignity clause to earn back the board's trust, though not the unrestricted funds. Those are gone permanently once the clause activates. Nathan looked up sharply. What kind of pathway? Service, Evan said simply. Documented, sustained, meaningful service to the fund and its mission. Minimum 2 years. The board evaluates progress every 6 months and can grant limited disbursements for genuine hardship, but the bulk of the money remains in community circulation. He handed the paper to Nathan. This is the restoration contract. If you sign it, you commit to specific service requirements. If you refuse, your share converts immediately with no further review. Nathan took the paper with trembling hands. Started reading. Minimum 20 hours per month of direct service, he read aloud. Teaching, mentoring, application review, or fund development. Monthly written reflection submitted to the board. Completion of community impact training. His voice faded. Lily stood up and read over his shoulder. 2 years? That's a lot of time. It's 800 hours total, said a voice from the audience. A young woman, maybe 30, with tired eyes and a kind smile. She walked down to join us in the center. I'm Rebecca Torres. 4 years ago, I was homeless. Living in my car with my 2 kids. I applied to the Sarah Fund for emergency housing assistance. She turned to face my children. I got 3 months of rent covered while I finished a medical billing certification. But the fund didn't just give me money, they required something from me too. 10 hours a month of volunteering. Food bank, community garden, whatever I could manage. Rebecca's voice grew steadier. I resented it at first. I was exhausted. Working, studying, raising kids alone. But those volunteer hours? They saved my life. Not financially, emotionally. I met people. Built a network. Found my first real job through a connection I made sorting cans at the food bank. She looked at Nathan. 800 hours sounds like punishment. It's actually a gift. It's your chance to see what your mother saw. Another person stood, a man in his 60s with a weather-beaten face and calloused hands. James Morrison. I got help from the Sarah Fund 11 years ago. Legal assistance fighting for custody of my grandson after my daughter's addiction got bad. Your father connected me with a lawyer who worked pro bono, and the fund covered filing fees. He walked down the aisle slowly, arthritis visible in his gait. The restoration pathway didn't exist back then, but the volunteer requirement did. I committed to 20 hours a month helping other grandparents navigate the system. I've been doing it ever since, 138 families so far. I'm not on the board, I don't get paid, but I show up because that's what circulation means. He stopped in front of Nathan. You're looking at this like a punishment because you think in terms of transactions. Money for time. But your mother thought in terms of transformation. Time invested in community doesn't cost you, it grows you. More people stood. The dome filled with voices. A teacher who'd volunteered after receiving emergency funds, those hours taught me more about education than my master's degree. A mechanic who'd mentored teens after getting a bridge loan, 3 of my ments now run their own shops. A social worker who'd coordinated family services after the fund helped her mother. I found my calling in those volunteer hours. Changed my whole career. Evan let the voices settle before continuing. The board meets in 9 days. Nathan, you can sign the restoration contract tonight and begin service immediately, which the board will consider favorably. Or you can refuse, and your share converts to grants with no path back. He turned to Lily. You didn't technically trigger the clause, but your participation in Friday's confrontation puts you under board review. You can also choose to sign a voluntary restoration contract, it would strengthen your case significantly. Lily looked at me. Dad, I'm sorry. I didn't understand what you'd been doing all these years. I thought you'd just given up after Mom died. Let yourself become small. I became exactly what I needed to be, I said. Your mother didn't want me chasing wealth. She wanted me building circulation. Nathan was still staring at the contract. If I sign this, what happens to the business loan? Do I still have to pay it back? Yes, Evan said. 18-month term, 0 interest, as agreed. You have 6 months remaining. That obligation is separate from the trust. And if I complete the 2 years of service? The board may approve limited disbursements for documented needs, medical, housing, education. But you'll never receive the full unrestricted amount your mother originally allocated. That ship sailed Friday at 3:47 p.m. The weight of that settled over Nathan like a physical thing. May spoke up quietly from her seat. Can I do it too? The service requirement? Everyone turned to look at her. I didn't lose my share, she continued. But I've been sitting here listening, and I realize, I didn't know any of this either. I took the money for grad school and never asked where it came from or what it meant. I want to understand what Mom built. Evan smiled slightly. Any beneficiary can volunteer for service. It doesn't reduce your share, but it connects you to the mission. Then I want to, May said. Sign me up. A woman stood near the back, older, elegant, with silver hair pulled into a bun. She hadn't spoken yet, but something about her presence commanded attention. Forgive me for interrupting, she said, her voice carrying clearly through the dome. I'm Margaret Chen, Patricia's mother, actually. I don't usually attend these gatherings, but Patricia insisted I come tonight. She made her way down carefully, leaning on a cane. I'm 83 years old. I immigrated from Taiwan in 1970 with $17 and 2 suitcases. I worked as a seamstress for 40 years, raised 2 children alone after my husband died, and never made more than $22,000 a year. Margaret reached the center and looked at each of my children in turn. When Patricia was in graduate school, I got sick. Cancer, like your mother. I had no insurance, no savings, nothing. We were going to lose everything, my apartment, Patricia's education, all of it. She paused, her eyes bright. A community fund gave us $18,000. Emergency medical assistance, they called it. No questions, no judgment, just help when we needed it most. I survived. Patricia finished her PhD. And we never knew who ran that fund until tonight. Margaret turned to me. It wasn't the Sarah Fund, this was 1998, before you started it. But it was the same idea. The same principle. Money that circulates to catch people when they fall. She faced Nathan again. That fund saved my life and my daughter's future. And you know what I did when I finally had money, 20 years later? I donated $30,000 to 3 different community funds. Not because I had to. Because I understood what your mother understood, wealth that circulates is wealth that lives. Margaret tapped her cane gently on the floor. So when you're deciding whether 800 hours is too much to ask, remember, someone once gave my family a future. Your mother gave hundreds of families futures. The only question is whether you're willing to be part of that legacy or walk away from it. She returned to her seat slowly, her daughter helping her up the steps. The silence that followed was profound. Nathan looked at the contract. Looked at me. Looked at the faces surrounding us in the dome, faces full of stories, struggles, second chances. He picked up the pen Evan offered. Where do I sign? Nathan's signature looked shaky on the page, nothing like the confident scrawl he used on business contracts. Evan witnessed it, dated it, and slid it into his briefcase. Welcome to the restoration pathway, Evan said. Your first orientation session is Wednesday evening, 6 p.m., at the community center on North Clinton. Don't be late. Lily took the pen next. I want to sign too. Even if the board doesn't require it, I should have been doing this all along. She signed below Nathan's name, her handwriting neater but her hand trembling just as much. May came down from her seat and signed third. When do we start? Tonight, I said. Right now, actually. I walked to the edge of the dome where a set of double doors stood closed. I pushed them open. The hallway beyond was lit with industrial fluorescence, and parked directly in the corridor, impossible to miss, was a school bus. But not just any bus. This one had been transformed. The yellow paint was still there, but the sides now featured vinyl wraps with bright graphics, books, microscopes, calculators, art supplies. The windows had been replaced with solar panels on the roof. And through the open door, I could see the interior had been completely rebuilt. What is that? Nathan asked, moving closer. The Rochester Chance bus, said Martin Webb, the carpenter, coming to stand beside me. Took 9 months to build. Started with a retired school bus from the district, they sold it to us for $1. Then we rebuilt everything inside. He led us onto the bus. The seats had been removed. In their place, folding desks, a small teaching station up front, laptop charging stations, bookshelves bolted to the walls, a tiny kitchen area with a microwave and mini fridge, even a small bathroom in the back. It's a mobile classroom, Martin explained. We park it in different neighborhoods Tuesday through Saturday. GED prep, SAT tutoring, ESL classes, job application workshops, basic computer skills, whatever people need. A young woman was already inside, setting up laptops for the evening session. She looked up when we entered. "Hi, Mr. Harris," she said warmly. Then, seeing my children, "Oh, you must be the kids. I'm Jasmine. I coordinate the bus schedule. Jasmine went through the workforce training program 3 years ago, I told them. Web development certificate. She now works for a tech company downtown and runs the bus program on weekends. Jasmine smiled. Saturday mornings are my favorite. We get high schoolers who can't afford SAT prep courses. Last year, 4 of our regular students got into SUNY schools with scholarships. One's studying engineering at Buffalo right now. Nathan walked through the bus slowly, touching the desks, the bookshelves. Who funded this? Community effort, Martin said. Your dad put in $20,000 from the Sarah Fund. I donated labor and materials at cost, another $15,000 value. Carmen Rodriguez organized a fundraiser at the hospital that brought in $8,000. Alumni donations covered the rest, about $12,000. $55,000, Nathan calculated automatically. For a bus. For a future factory, corrected a voice from outside. A teenage girl climbed onto the bus, backpack slung over her shoulder. She was maybe 16, wearing a Rochester Community College hoodie that was 2 sizes too big. Sorry, am I early? She asked Jasmine. Right on time, Aisha. We're just showing some visitors around. The girl, Aisha, noticed us and gave a small wave. Cool. You here for the bio tutoring session? They're Mr. Harris's children, Jasmine explained. Oh. Aisha's face lit up. Mr. Harris is like a legend. Are you guys helping with the program too? Lily opened her mouth but no words came out. We're learning about it, May said finally. What brings you here? I'm prepping for my college applications, Aisha said, dropping her backpack onto one of the desks. I want to study biomedical engineering, but my school doesn't offer AP sciences. So I come here every Tuesday and Thursday. Ms. Washington teaches us, she's a retired biology teacher who volunteers. She pulled out a worn notebook covered in equations and diagrams. Last week we did a pipette lab. Ms. Washington brought in actual lab equipment, micropipettes, petri dishes, everything. I got to measure microliters for the first time. It was amazing. Nathan stared at her. You come here twice a week? After regular school? 3 times, actually. Mondays I help with the middle school math tutoring. I'm good at algebra, so I can explain it to the younger kids. She shrugged like it was obvious. Ms. Washington says if you want to be a scientist, you have to think like a community, everybody helping everybody else understand more. An older woman climbed onto the bus, carrying a box of lab supplies. Aisha, sweetheart, can you help me set up? We're doing cellular respiration tonight and I've got, oh, hello. Ms. Washington, these are Mr. Harris's kids, Jasmine said. The woman set down her box and smiled warmly. How wonderful. Your father talks about you often. She turned to Aisha. These are the children who'll be joining our volunteer program. That's great. Aisha said genuinely. We always need more tutors. Can any of you do calculus? Because we have 2 seniors who need help with AP Calc and only 1 volunteer who knows it. Nathan blinked. Yes, actually. I majored in economics. Calculus was required. Perfect. Mr. Chen does Wednesdays but we need someone for Fridays. Could you do Fridays, 6 to 8? He looked at me. At Evan. At the contract he'd just signed. Yes, he said slowly. I could do Fridays. Aisha grinned. Awesome. I'll tell Marcus and Devin. They're going to be so relieved. Ms. Washington started unpacking her supplies, test tubes, a portable microscope, handmade flashcards. I taught high school biology for 32 years. Retired in 2019. Thought I'd spend my days gardening. She laughed. Then I heard about this bus and realized I wasn't done teaching. Not by a long shot. She arranged materials on the teaching station. We get about 15 to 20 students each session. Different kids each night, different subjects. Some are working toward GEDs. Some are current high school students whose schools don't offer what they need. Some are adults who never finished their education and want another shot. And you do this for free? Lily asked. I do this for the same reason Aisha tutors middle schoolers, Ms. Washington said. Because education isn't a commodity, it's a circulation system. I had great teachers who gave me opportunities. I taught thousands of students over 3 decades. Now I'm teaching on a bus, and it's some of the most important work I've ever done. More students started arriving. A man in his 40s carrying a GED study guide. 2 teenage boys with matching basketball team jackets. A woman with a toddler who immediately went to a small play corner I hadn't noticed, toys and books organized neatly in a bin. We keep childcare supplies, Jasmine explained, seeing me looking. Parents can't study if they can't bring their kids. The bus filled with the sound of opening textbooks, quiet conversations, Jasmine booting up the laptops. Nathan stood in the middle of it all, looking lost. Aisha touched his arm gently. First time volunteering? Is it that obvious? She smiled. You have the face my uncle had when he started coming here. Like he couldn't figure out where all his assumptions went wrong. That's accurate, Nathan admitted. It gets easier, she said. Once you stop thinking about what you're giving up and start noticing what you're getting. What am I getting? Aisha gestured around the bus, at Ms. Washington setting up the microscope, at the man studying his GED guide with fierce concentration, at the woman's toddler carefully stacking blocks in the play corner. You're getting to see what happens when people get chances, she said simply. And once you see it, you can't unsee it. Ms. Washington called out, Aisha, can you help me with the microscope slide preparation? Coming. She grabbed her notebook and headed to the front, then paused and looked back at Nathan. Friday at 6, right? Don't forget. Marcus and Devin are counting on you. She disappeared into the cluster of students. Nathan stood very still. This is where your 800 hours begin, I said quietly. Not as punishment. As education. Lily was watching the woman with the toddler, who was now attempting a math worksheet while her daughter played nearby. What happens if we fail? If we can't do the 2 years? Then you fail, I said. And the money goes to work without you. But I don't think you'll fail. Why not? I nodded toward Aisha, now confidently preparing microscope slides under Ms. Washington's guidance. Because you're about to have teachers who won't let you. Evan checked his watch. The board meets October 15th. Until then, log your hours with Jasmine. She'll report to me weekly. He left the bus, briefcase in hand, a man with other clients and other business. My 3 children stood in the mobile classroom, surrounded by people learning, teaching, building futures one tutoring session at a time. Dad, May said softly, what was Mom like? When she was studying sociology, writing that paper Dr. Chen mentioned? I thought about Sarah in our tiny apartment, typing at our old desktop computer while 3 kids slept in the next room, her face lit by the glow of the monitor. She was awake, I said. Fully alive. She saw systems where other people saw individuals. She saw circulation where others saw charity. And she made me promise to keep that vision moving after she was gone. We didn't know, Lily whispered. We should have known. Now you do, I said. The question is what you do with the knowing. Ms. Washington called from the front, we're starting in 2 minutes. If anyone wants to observe tonight's lesson, grab a seat. Nathan, Lily, and May looked at each other. Then, slowly, they sat down. The next 2 weeks moved fast. Nathan showed up Friday night at 6 p.m. sharp, a stack of calculus review books under his arm that he'd ordered online. Marcus and Devin turned out to be twin brothers, seniors at East High, first in their family aiming for college. They were smart, intimidatingly smart, but their school's calculus teacher had quit mid-semester and the replacement didn't know the material. "Derivatives are killing us," Marcus said during that first session. "We get the concept but not the application." Nathan pulled out a whiteboard marker and started working through problems. I watched from the back of the bus as something shifted in his face, the condescension gone, replaced by actual focus. He was good at this. Patient in a way I hadn't seen him be in years. By the end of the 2-hour session, both brothers were solving problems independently. "Same time next week?" Devin asked, packing up. "I'll be here," Nathan said. And he was. Every Friday. Then he added Tuesdays when a woman named Gloria asked if anyone could help her understand business loan applications. Lily started on the Educational Emergency Committee, reviewing applications from families needing help with school expenses. The first case she read was a single father whose daughter needed glasses to see the board at school. $340. Lily approved it in 10 minutes. "It's so little," she said to me after that first committee meeting. $300 changes everything for them, and it's nothing to us. "That's circulation," I told her. "Small amounts, high velocity, massive impact." She took on more cases. By the second week, she was coordinating with schools directly, building relationships with guidance counselors to identify students before crises hit. May chose the Emergency Legal Helpline. She'd just finished her paralegal certificate as part of her graduate program. So she could screen cases and connect people to volunteer lawyers. Her first call was from a grandmother fighting for custody after her son's incarceration. "I didn't know what to say," May admitted after the call. "She was crying and I froze." "What did you do?" I asked. "I stayed on the line. Listened. Then I found her a family law attorney who's taking the case pro bono through our network. They meet tomorrow." "That's exactly right," I said. "Sometimes listening is the intervention." She worked the helpline every Wednesday evening, taking notes in a careful log she showed me weekly. The board meeting came on October 15th. 7 members convened in the Community Center conference room, 3 fund alumni including Carmen Rodriguez, 2 community representatives, a financial advisor named Thomas Weir, and me. Evan presented the cases formally. Nathan Harris triggered the dignity clause on October 3rd. He has since completed 32 hours of verified service, 16 hours tutoring calculus, 10 hours assisting with business application reviews, 6 hours at community fundraising events. His reflection essays show developing awareness of systemic issues and genuine engagement with beneficiaries. Carmen read from one of Nathan's reflections, "I always thought success was about making something from nothing. I'm starting to understand success is about making something that helps others make something." The twins I tutor work harder than I ever did, with a fraction of the resources. They're not looking for handouts, they're looking for the same advantages I took for granted. She looked up. "This shows growth." Thomas Weir, the financial advisor, reviewed the numbers. Nathan's business loan repayment is current. Actually, he paid 2 months ahead last week. His trust share, $643,000, has been moved into the community grant allocation as required. If the board approves restoration, he remains on the pathway with biannual reviews, but the bulk of funds remain in circulation. "How do the recipients view his involvement?" asked one of the community representatives, a woman named Denise Hoffman who ran a local nonprofit. "I asked Marcus and Devin directly," Carmen said. "They said, and I quote, Mr. Harris actually cares if we understand. He stays late, answers texts when we're stuck on homework, brought us college application fee waivers. He's solid." The board voted 6-0 in favor of continuing Nathan's restoration pathway, with me abstaining. Lily's case was simpler. She hadn't triggered the clause, and her voluntary service showed initiative. The board approved her continued access to trust funds but required ongoing service commitment, minimum 15 hours monthly for 2 years. "You're not on restriction," I told her after the meeting. "But you're on notice. The board expects follow-through." "I want to follow through," she said. "I'm coordinating 12 families this month. I know their kids' names, their struggles, their hopes. I can't just walk away from that." That night, I found Nathan sitting on the planetarium steps long after everyone else had gone home. The building was dark except for the security lights. "You okay?" I asked, sitting beside him. "Marcus got his SAT scores today," Nathan said. 1510. That's 94th percentile. He's applying to Cornell, MIT, Carnegie Mellon, every top engineering program on the East Coast. "That's excellent." He cried when he told me. Cried. Nathan's voice was rough. He said, "I'm getting out, Mr. Harris. I'm really getting out." Like education was an escape pod and he'd finally found the hatch. He looked at me. I never felt that way about college. It was just expected. The next thing on the list. "Different starting lines," I said. "Yeah." He rubbed his face. "I calculated something today. My trust share that I lost? 643,000. If the fund distributes that at an average of 8,000 per recipient, which is the median grant size according to Evans data, that's 80 people. 80 Marcus and Devons. 80 Aishas. 80 families who get a shot." He stood up. Hands in his pockets. "I was angry when I signed that restoration contract. Felt like you'd ambushed me, trapped me into volunteering. And now? Now I think I was already trapped, just in a different kind of cage. One where nothing mattered except accumulation. Where worth was measured in account balances and zip codes." He turned to face me. "I'm not saying I'm fixed. I'm not. I still care about money too much, still think in terms of status. But Friday nights? When Marcus solves a problem he couldn't do an hour before, and his whole face lights up? Those 2 hours are the best part of my week." "Your mother would be proud," I said. "I don't know about that. But maybe I'm starting to understand what she was trying to build." He headed to his car, then paused. "Dad? Thank you. For not just writing that check. For making me see this." I watched him drive away, then sat alone on the planetarium steps for a long time, looking up at real stars in the October sky. Sarah would have loved this moment. 6 months passed. The board met again in April to review progress. Nathan had logged 412 hours, well ahead of the required pace. Marcus and Devon had both been accepted to engineering programs with full scholarships. Nathan had expanded his tutoring to include a Sunday morning finance literacy class, teaching 20 adults basic budgeting and credit repair. Lily's Educational Emergency Committee had processed 63 applications, approving 57. She'd built partnerships with 4 school districts and created a streamlined application system that cut processing time from 3 weeks to 5 days. May's legal helpline had handled 142 cases, connecting families to volunteer attorneys for custody battles, eviction defense, immigration paperwork, and estate planning. She'd recruited 6 new lawyers to the volunteer network. "You've all exceeded requirements," Carmen told them at the review meeting. "The question now is what comes next." Nathan spoke first. "I want to propose something. The Anti-Crisis Business Fund that helped me, it needs expansion. I've identified 12 small businesses in Rochester that are 60 to 90 days from closure, all viable with temporary cash flow assistance. I want to contribute $50,000 from my personal savings to create a rapid response fund." The board approved it unanimously. Lily presented next. "The Educational Emergency Program is reactive, we help after problems emerge. I want to create a preventive track, school supply subscriptions, vision screening partnerships, a uniform bank. I've secured commitments from 3 local businesses to sponsor it. Also approved. May's proposal was simpler: expand the legal helpline to include tenant rights workshops. Housing instability came up in 40% of my cases. I want to teach people their rights before they face eviction. Do it, Denise Hoffman said immediately. At the end of the meeting, Thomas were presented the fund's annual report. Total disbursements had reached $1.2 million since 2009. Alumni repayment had climbed to 29%. 478 people had received assistance. Economic impact studies showed every dollar generated approximately $2.8 in community economic activity. Sarah's thesis was correct, he concluded. Circulation creates value. This fund has generated roughly $3.4 million in economic impact from $1.2 million in disbursements. We refashioned the trust formally that spring. The Rochester Chance Fund became its own nonprofit entity with expanded board governance. Nathan, Lily, and May joined as junior board members with voting rights on operational decisions but not on their own cases. The bus expanded to a second vehicle, a van converted into a mobile career counseling center. Martin Webb's furniture shop donated custom-built desks. Carmen's Hospital Network provided free health screenings on the first Saturday of each month. Marcus and Devin came back that summer before heading to college. They spent 2 weeks training new tutors, sharing what had worked for them. Pass it forward, Marcus told a nervous volunteer on his first night. Someone helped us. Now we help you help someone else. That's how it works. I stood in the back of the bus during that training session, watching my children teach volunteers about application review, active listening, maintaining boundaries while staying compassionate. They didn't walk away with cash that October night in the planetarium. They walked away with something Sarah understood was more valuable: purpose that outlasts individual lifetimes. Wealth measured not by what's kept in accounts, but by what circulates through communities, touching lives, creating chances, building futures. That's the legacy Sarah left. Not money sitting still in a trust, but money in motion, carrying forward the dignity of second chances. And my children, finally, had learned to keep it moving.